entirely out of control. You asking for help is not an admission of weakness. In fact, I've learned that it's an admission of strength. I don't think I would have been able to make it as far as I did if I took the stance that I can do this on my own. I think life on its own is very challenging. By virtue that you're alive, you are going to face challenges in different forms and in different shapes. So it becomes quite important that you have a very strong support system so that you're able to tackle that and you're able to have an independent opinion so that people can say to you, this is not you, this is something outside of you. Of course, I'm not saying that you mustn't take responsibility, because that's also important that you do so. So by the time I left university, I left out one bit that I went to, after I failed third year, when I came back, completed my second year, I failed my third year, and then I just thought, maybe this actuarial science thing is not for me. I must look for something else. In which case, then I decided, let me go to Dubai for a year and see how I do. I think the intention behind going to Dubai is that I started getting uncomfortable at the fact that maybe I'm doing so badly at school because I'm becoming lazy and using this thing saying that I'm depressed as a crutch. So I wanted to go to Dubai to see if I can survive without the emotional support of all my friends and family, and to really decide that I really wanted to do actuarial science and this was the thing for me. And I think it's very important in the journeys that you decide, you really investigate that actuarial science is for you, because there's a lot of people that have not necessarily finished with actuarial science and have made successes of their lives. So there's no shame in us, for example, saying actuarial science might not be for me. I was determined to be an actuary. I took the time to go to Dubai and really think about why I wanted to become an actuary. A key thing for me is that I was born in a village. I mean, I used to carry water on my head. My English was not as articulate as it is now. And for me to come from that background and be able to say to people, I am an actuary, I thought that would really tell people that it doesn't matter what your beginning is, you can become whatever you want. I'm not sure what's happening, but there's a screen here that has taken over from us, and I see there's typing. Okay, technical issues, once we figure it out, we'll solve it, but now we know that it's quite possible that you can hijack the screen and share it with everybody. Let's avoid doing that. Okay, so there's some admin going on in the background. I'll try and ignore it and just carry on with the session. Keeping mindful of time so that you guys have enough time to ask questions. So I decided actuarial science is going to give me a platform to really start building my legacy. And by legacy, I think for me, it has always been important that I contribute to the greater good of humanity. I didn't know how I would do that. But I just knew that I didn't want to be an oxygen thief. And for me, it was quite important to say, if people can look at me with all the things that I've gone through, some of you who would have watched my insurance apprentice video will know that I've also recently gone through the process of being introduced to my biological father. This happened about 2 years ago. So when this first started, I was literally facing my last exam. My biological father had been absent in my life for about 25 years. So I was dealing with that when I was facing my last exam. And this is normal. This is something you guys are going to have to prepare for, that life is going to happen while you're writing these exams. And it becomes quite important to balance what's important and the exams. The previous year, I missed a session for the first time. And it was something that I thought I would never do because there was a lot of guilt associated with not being able to write. For the first time, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made for myself. I would also count going to Dubai as one of those decisions that really helped me just decide that this is really what I wanted to do. When I came back from Dubai, I struggled through third year and just literally made it. I never thought I would actually even qualify with a degree. I thought I would spend most of my life at first just trying to get a qualification. I ended up doing my third year in mathematics and financial and actuarial science because I didn't want to do statistics again. And my last exam happened to be ST9, which has a lot of statistics, like it's statistics on steroids. And that was very, very challenging for me because I think I had it in my mind that I can't do statistics. So I think I failed that exam maybe twice, and I only passed it on my third attempt. And to pass that exam, I had to go back and really analyze why I failed statistics. And one of the things is that because everybody tells you actuarial science is hard and statistics is hard, you get it in your head that you might not be adequate for this. And in fact, the Actuarial Women's Committee is having a session on imposter syndrome. There's a lot of actuarial students, myself included, who have imposter syndrome, who think that you made it by fluke and you actually don't deserve to be there. My first class, the lecturer said, look to your right, look to your left, only one of you is going to be there. And I didn't envision that that person who would be there in third year was going to be me, because to my left was somebody from St. Stephen's, to my right was somebody who spoke English like they came from England. So for me to identify coming from Limpopo in a room full of people that I could actually qualify, I didn't feel like I deserved it. If I can just ask somebody to mute the audio, there's some background noise there. Please, can you just mute your audio? Thank you so much. So there's a lot of imposter syndrome, and you might not outwardly say, I have imposter syndrome, but you do feel it. For example, when you look at your friend and you think, oh my gosh, this person's going to qualify, but I am not. So I think the good news here is that I got out of university with one exemption, having done a bridging course to just get into actuarial science, having taken a year off because I was sick, having failed a year because it was just really difficult. And I got out of that university with one exemption, and I'm still qualified. So everybody can do it. I think already that you made it into actuarial science should give you some assurance that you can do this. The next step is how much are you willing to put in to be able to qualify. And I come to my next point of how I managed to pass my CTs first time around post-university. If I speak to some of my friends at university, I was one of the least likely to qualify as an actuary. In fact, some people just told me, actuarial science is not for you. Maybe try and consider doing something else. And I think that's one of the reasons I went to Dubai, to really see if this is what I wanted to do. And then I met somebody who made me realize that actuarial science exams are exams like any other. By the time you leave university, the number of exams that you have passed surpasses the number of exams that you have failed. So you must judge your performance based on that, as opposed to holding on to the failures, because we tend to do that as human beings. So when she told me that if I've passed so many exams, why is this actuarial science thing such a problem? I think the way I thought about these exams. But I also was cognizant of the fact that the way I studied at university is similar to how I studied in high school. And actuarial science is such a beast that those of you who study the night before or 2 days before, it will not help you. I would want to say I wish I had gotten more exemptions at university, because it would have made qualifying a lot easier and a lot faster, but I didn't. For those that haven't, you can still qualify. It doesn't mean you won't become an actuary, but it does definitely make it easier. I studied. I mean, I did at least 5 years worth of past papers. That's about maybe 10 to 15 past papers a sitting. This is after I have gone through the notes twice. I've answered my question and answer bank. I have done mock exams, and that's quite important, because I think when you're studying for an exam, you think you understand, but until you're actually writing it under exam conditions, you will only know what you don't know in that moment where you freeze, because that happens a lot. You enter into exam, you think you know everything, and you get a question just completely throws you off. So already in my study technique, I had to make sure that when I wrote an exam, I studied with the things I was very comfortable with. When I was studying, especially, it was quite important for me to focus on the concepts that I struggled with. With your CTs, practice makes perfect. Any application work, any mathematical type of work, statistical type of work, you will need to be able to do calculations in your sleep. So there's no way around practicing. So I'd encourage you guys to look at past papers if those are available and just go through them. Write at least 2 under exam conditions. Ask your friend to mark it for you, so that you can see where you're struggling and then focus on that. I also discovered that studying until the very last minute might not necessarily be the best thing to do, because even the things you do know, you start panicking and you forget them. So I think my CA1, I stopped studying 2 days before the exam because I just couldn't. And I passed that first time round. So sometimes you need to really gauge what your emotional state is, because you could displace the confidence that you have, and most times it's not a lot, by forcing studying at a time when you should be resting. And I think that's where exercise really helped me personally, because it's important to also take breaks. During university, I studied nonstop. I only got up with one exemption. After varsity, when I studied, I make sure I took breaks. I made sure I exercised. I mean, I became a beast at gym. And that really helped clear my mind and refocus. And also when you take a break, it allows your mind to absorb some of the information that you think you understand but don't really understand, so that the next day when you wake up and go through it again, you then can grasp the concept. So, and I've done different things to try and do that balance. When I was doing my CTs, I was going to gym a lot. When I started doing my STs, I picked up dancing. When I was doing my last exam, I picked up meditation. So it's quite important that you don't think just because you're doing one thing it's going to work for all your exams, because different exams require you to use different parts of your brain. I think one thing that I didn't know when I was at university is that there's a core reading and a combined reading. The core reading only focuses on the core concepts. If you can get your hands on the combined reading, it goes into more details in terms of trying to explain certain concepts that the core reading will not touch on. It also gives examples. You also get the question and answer bank, that after each section you can do your questions and answer back and just see which points you're really struggling with, and really focus on those. I know they're very expensive, but if your family can afford, you're in a position to be able to afford that, I'd really encourage you to buy your combined material pack. There's a lot of people who are more privileged than others who have that combined materials pack, who end up doing a lot better than other students just because they have that added information. I think YouTube helped me get over my fear of statistics. One of the things that I must say is that at university, because you're a big class, your lecturers won't be able to assist you as much on your weaknesses, because there's a whole class of other people. So even in the explanation, if you haven't understood a certain topic in a lecture, they'll move on while you're still stuck on the one thing you didn't understand. The advantage of using YouTube is that value at risk, for example, I think I only fully grasped it when I did my ST9, my final exam, because I saw some guy trying to explain to, I think, nurses, because they do statistics as part of their courses, and he was explaining that concept. And it was broken down in such simplified terms, because I think as actuarial professionals, we tend to be very technical and we take it for granted that people understand certain things. I'm not saying that's the case with your lecturers, but they might generally move at the pace of the average group. So if you're a little bit behind on certain concepts, you continue being behind until you catch up. So that's why YouTube is really your friend. You can save particular channel. I think there's a South African guy, Michael, I can't remember his name offhand, who's making videos to help students. So the concepts that you're really struggling with, get those on YouTube explained to you so that you are able to keep up to date. So I think the gist of things, because I want to really give a lot of time for questions, is that irrespective of where you are, whether you're in first year, second year, third year, I think if you're in third year already, you should have the comfort that you have survived first and second year, so you can do this. Once you're done with university, I think the fact that you did university and you graduated with a degree also says you're capable of qualifying. How much effort you put in will then determine whether or not you finally become an actuary. But I must say, just based on myself, the odds really were against me, and statistically, I shouldn't have qualified. And I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people who statistically shouldn't have qualified that have ended up qualifying just because they were determined to do it and they were willing to put in the hard work. But importantly, I couldn't have done this without the support of everybody. And I think that's what a lot of students neglect, to say, if your lecturer is your friend, they're able, because they're also human beings, they're able to know you and help you on your weaknesses without even you having to tell them. So if you can have a talking relationship with your lecturers, that will really help you. For those of you in your final year and you're going into the workplace, the same thing applies. People will only generally consider people that they know and understand. So if they know you're good at a particular thing and an opportunity comes up, then they'll consider you because they know you're interested in that. It is very difficult for you to get exposure and certain knowledge if you stick to the clique that you're always with. Because even in terms of your knowledge base, you only know what's within your group. If you expand your network a little bit more, you'll be able to get particular information from other people that under normal circumstances you wouldn't have access to. So one of the things I made sure I did is really get involved in the profession through my involvement with ASABA, to the point where I became ASABA president, and now I sit on council as the ASABA representative. That has given me access to people that under normal circumstances I wouldn't have access to. The presidents, the past presidents, CEOs of companies. On my own, I wouldn't have had that access. But because I'm part of a collective, I was able to get that access. So your success is going to also be partially be helped by how big your network is. And in fact, a lot of people say your network is your net worth. That applies at university, and it also applies in your working career. So I think for now, let me pause and just say, are there any questions? So you can either type them or you can speak and just ask, because I think I've spoken a lot. Let's say you have a question, please ask.
Okay. I just recently graduated and I don't have any exemptions. And I've been struggling to get a job up until this time, but I think Corona is also playing an effect on this. But I'm starting to feel down, to feel like, you know what, like you just said, I just got lucky in graduating. So I don't know, what should I do to keep my head high, to keep my spirit high, and to also, you know, not give up? Because I'm getting emails of, we regret to let you know that you can't get in, you know what I mean. So it's bad. So I don't know what to do, or whether I should write independently before applying for work. I'm very confused at the moment.
So I can completely relate to that. It took me 8 months to get a job as well. I think what also disadvantaged me, on top of only having one exemption, is that I'm also a Zambian national, so I wasn't qualifying for BEE. So definitely, that's why I always say, get as many exemptions as you possibly can. If you can sacrifice 3 nights of drinking to really focus and just get that exemption, do so, because it will help you in terms of your job, getting a job first of all. Secondly, it will also help you in terms of what your starting salary is going to be. The more exemptions you have, the higher your salary. But just to get back to your questions, what helped me is my network again. So I think it's quite important to keep busy and have income coming in, and not be, I don't know what word to use for this, but not think you can't mop floors just because you have a degree. Do not think you're too good to do any job, because the important thing is to make sure that you're coming out of the house, you're going out there, and you're working. And in those interactions, you don't know who you're going to meet. one of the tips that I was given when I was looking for work, when I was struggling and feeling very like I'll never get a job ever, is that they told me to have coffee dates with people. To say, if there's somebody at Deloitte, if your uncle, your aunt knows somebody at a company somewhere, EY, whatever, PwC, whatever the consulting firm is, if you want to be in insurance company, ask those people out for coffee for advice. Sometimes it might be that it's just your CV, so somebody reviewing your CV might help. Sometimes it might be where you're applying. If you're on PNet but you're not on LinkedIn, looking for a job is a full-time job. So it's something that needs to be taken very seriously. When I was in Dubai, I was waitressing. So I was quite happy to start waitressing while I was looking for a permanent job. I just got fortunate in that when I finished my final year, I did my vacation work at Liberty. And then I just worked there as a contract worker on and off sometimes when they had work for me, until my boss helped me find my permanent job. And that's one of the things. Do not take for granted that just because what you're in right now is not what you're going to do, that you shouldn't give it your 100%. You must give it your 100%, whether you're sweeping floors or whatever you're doing, because if you clean that floor really well, even if your manager or whoever is there can't hire you, at least they'll be able to refer you to somebody else who will be able to help you. So that goes with you guys who are still in university. If your lecturer sees that you're very hardworking, your lecturers have connections outside of universities, they'll be able to say, this person is struggling. So reach out to your lecturers. Au pairing is also one thing that helps. Tutoring helps. I think there's a few companies that help tutoring, so you can still maintain earning an income via tutoring. If you're tutoring, the parents of your students might be able to help you get a job. And I think, and now I might get slightly racial, but our people who, for example, have white friends, those are not bad connections to have, because most of those people are directors at companies. They might be able to just look at your CV and say, oh, maybe this, just give it to somebody. Sometimes just somebody giving your CV to somebody else carries more weight than if you do it via the app. So I'm just going to read through some of the questions. Which companies how long did it take me to qualify? So I graduated in 2010. I qualified as a master, associate member of the Actuarial Society of South Africa in 2008, towards the end of 2008, and then I became a fellow of the Actuarial Society of South Africa in 2009. So if you count, we're in 2019, I graduated in 2010, including when I left varsity, many years. In fact, I got to a point where I thought I would never qualify. And no matter how many exemptions I had behind me, even at my last exam, I feared that I would never qualify. So my first company was Liberty. Before that, I did some vacation work at Aon South Africa that really helped me in terms of just getting accustomed to the work environment. So if you're not applying for Asaba vacation work, you ought to, because it might really help you. And then I went to Centric. I was there for 8 years. The reason I stayed at Centric for so long is one of the things my mentors kept saying to me is that changing job is one of the most stressful things you ever encounter. So if you are stable and you have the necessary support at your job, you'd rather stay there and work at qualifying than do that, than just leave. And even when I was leaving Centric to go to the company that I'm working for now, it took me about 2 years to get a job. So this job hunting doesn't stop. And coincidentally, after years of just nothing, I got 5 offers to choose from when I was qualifying. So like I said, the tide changes. So sometimes you might be unfortunate in one way, and then your luck then changes later on. So if you can just persevere through the challenges, things will come right. So make sure somebody reviews your CV if you're struggling with work. Make sure you're on PNet. Make sure you're on LinkedIn. Make sure you're making use of LinkedIn in terms of getting advice. There's a lot of people looking for an opportunity to help somebody in their career development. So that's a good place to do that. So somebody has just asked to say, is it difficult to get a job as a foreign national? It is challenging, and as it should be, because when you're a foreign national, preference should always be given to the residents of a particular country. I think that is definitely fair. And I think the BE concept is definitely something I encourage. It's not, I think the execution has been criticized, but in terms of providing opportunities, I think that has really helped in terms of getting some people opportunities that otherwise they wouldn't have had access to. So it will definitely be more challenging if you are not a South African citizen, because you will not meet BEE requirements. If you're a non-South African citizen and you don't have exemptions, it makes it the more challenging. I think in the past, because there were relatively few actuaries, it made it such that when you immediately graduated, it was easy for you to get a job. That is not necessarily the case anymore. And I think one of the challenges is that people want somebody with experience, and when you're just starting out off, you don't have that experience because you just have your university degree. So it becomes important that you get involved during university in things that demonstrate on your CV that you're actually more than just a student. So being a tutor, for example, is something that really looks good on your CV. Being involved in organizations, those that are involved with the ASABA chapters at the universities. In sports, I did a lot of sports. In fact, I got a sports scholarship. Please, can I just ask that person to just mute their audio? Okay, thank you so much. So I did get vacation work via ASABA. To apply, you just go to the ASABA website. I think we do 2 applications a year, one for the June intake and one for the December intake. So if you're not familiar with ASABA and how it helps, it's quite important that you do that. Please, can I just ask that person to mute their audio? I think we're hearing mom in the background. If you can just mute.
It disconnected you. Oh, okay. But then the next.
That person saying it disconnected you, if you can just mute your audio, it's a little bit distracting. So how did I get the opportunity to go to Dubai? There's a lot of people, so vacation work, apply. You can do it online. Make sure you're registered and you're receiving ASABA emails, because we do communications to tell people that the applications are open. Again, with getting vacation work, if your CV is not impressive, you are not likely to get vacation work, because employers are looking for candidates that they can then employ, and they want people who they think are most likely to succeed, and that is measured in terms of exemptions. If your exemptions are not on point, then you have to rely on your extramural activity at university. So I was chair of Housecom at some point. Like I said, I got a sports scholarship. So you have ways of making your CV impressive, even if academically you're not very strong, because there's a lot of people who also believe that not the complete A students are the most successful. Sometimes it's the ones that have a balance, because they can sort of navigate social EQ and IQ a lot better. So that helps to have that on your CV. I'm just going to read through the emails. So I've answered the application. Going to Dubai, there's a lot of companies looking for people. If you're going to teach English in Korea, so if you just go online and look, if you're really serious, you'll definitely find something. The company I used was, I can't pronounce it now, so maybe I'll just, after this, I'll put it on my LinkedIn. I'll just make sure that it's still working. But those people recruit South Africans to work in Dubai. Because Dubai is such a rich country, it's cheaper for them to get labor outside the country, and so you can get a job. And they organize visas, they organized flights for me. So all I had to do is literally just get on the plane and go. I was fortunate that the person who ran the company was a librarian at my old high school. Again, when I was coming back to the point that your connections, you don't know when they're going to come in helpful. So the bigger your network, the better for you, because you never know when you might use someone. Indeed, congratulations to the lady who just graduated. So a chartered enterprise risk actuary on a day-to-day, it depends on your role, because I am a CIRA, but I'm not necessarily a chief risk officer. I think all actuaries, irrespective of your qualification, part of our job is risk management. Because whether you're pricing a product, you need to ensure that there's going to be sufficient profits. You need to make sure that the policyholders are not unfairly charged. You need to make sure you have a lot of stakeholders to juggle as an actuarial professional, irrespective of whether you're in banking, whether you're in risk management, whether in wider fields. So I think the qualification on its own teaches you how to juggle those things. So a chartered enterprise risk actually basically takes care of the risks of the company, depending on what level they're at. So some people might, you might look at your compliance risk, your regulatory risk, your solvency risk, and various other types of risks. I think there's an episode of The Insurance Apprentice, 2 episodes actually look at those particular risks. So if you just watch The Insurance Apprentice, for those of you who are interested in being in the insurance industry, it will help you understand what a chartered enterprise risk actually does and what an actuary does, because we had 2 actuaries in the top 2. I don't think they ever expected that to happen. But we have 2 actuaries who have shown personality, I think. In terms of your cover letter, I think try and get to the point as quickly as possible. Highlight your strengths. Expand on some of those things in your CV that you are not allowed to really expand on, because one of the things that's important about your CV, it must be easy to read. If there's too much detail in a CV sometimes, and this depends on the level and whatever job you're applying for. Some people might be lazy to read it and go for one that's easy to read. Your cover letter is what you use to really stand out, the thing that makes you unique and why you qualify for the job. I think when you're applying for a job, a lot of people, what they do is that they do not tailor their CVs to the job. So if you're, for example, really job hunting and there's a lot of jobs and you really genuinely can't get to it, your cover letter is the opportunity you have to say why you are really qualified for the role you're applying for. So your cover letter is the thing that you really might want to be different for every application you make, because you're making it specific to the role you're applying for. But also you're giving the person who's going to receive your CV an opportunity to look at you as an individual, not just a CV, but you as Memory Zimba, to say what are your strengths, what might be your weaknesses, what are your passions, and if there's alignment, then you can then say we're going to hire this person. I think also what's critical and very important to remember is that when you're going for job interviews, I know when you've been looking for a long time, you don't always have the luxury of choosing, but when you're looking for jobs, as much as when you're interviewing, that the people are interviewing you to make sure that you qualify for the role, you're also interviewing the company to make sure you're a good fit. What we tend to do as individuals is that we don't see what we have to offer. So when you're going to a job, you must make sure you understand your value. That is very, very important. Even when you're entering into an exam, I think one of the things I'm very grateful for is that ASA makes use of church when we're writing exams. So at least you can say, hallelujah, God be with me when you're sitting there and writing exam. But I think for me, from an emotional perspective, having that confidence to say God is with me, and it doesn't have to necessarily be God, whatever boosts your confidence. When you're sitting in an exam situation, it will help you. The same thing when you're sitting in an interview, when you're writing your CV, you need to really write down what your strengths are. What are your strengths? So in the interview process, that must come out. And then you must also look at what type of company you want to work for. So that when you join a company, you're not there for only 1 year, but you're there for 3 years, and really make sure you use those 3 years to learn and build knowledge and put it under your belt. Just the next question, do you think qualifying as an actuary is worth it? That's a very good question. Look at me, even my teeth are whiter than normal. So I think I would say it's definitely worth it for 2 reasons, I think, 2 key reasons. First of all, it was worth it for me because I understood why I wanted to be an actuary. I think those sleepless nights and writing those exams, it's not worth it if you don't understand why you're doing it in the first place. So before you even think about qualifying, just when you're at university, be very clear on why you want to be an actuary. I was fortunate enough to have Daphne Horowitz, who is a leadership coach. She's on Facebook, and I'll also share a link there to her page, who is a qualified actuary who became a life coach. And she asked me, she challenged me to say, Memory, why do you want to be an actuary? Why is it important to you personally? What is it going to give you? And why are you doing it? Because if you're doing it for your parents, when those sleepless nights where you're looking at the answer to a question paper and you still don't understand what the question is asking you, in those moments where things are really tough, it's quite important to understand what you're doing it for. When you have that down, it'll become worth it. I mean, the very opportunity to be here and talk to you guys, that you guys took the time to actually log into this session, to hear me speak, for me, it's worth it, because that's what I wanted to do. For me, it was about legacy, for the opportunity to inspire other people and say, irrespective of what struggles you might have to go through, it's possible to get this thing right. So already I've fulfilled that goal to say I'm able to assist somebody else who might be going through something I also experienced, to make it just a little bit easy for them. So it's worth it. In terms of financially, what it gives you, actuaries do not earn peanuts. So that means some of the things, traveling, I love to travel. Qualifying as an actuary allowed me to have that kind of lifestyle. Being able to sit at a slow lounge at an airport when I'm going for a meeting, that's not something a lot of professions can be able to do. So from a financial perspective as well, it really does help you. In terms of being able to uplift your family, we all know about black tax. It will also help you there. But I think quite critically, you need to answer for yourself why you want to be an actuary and what it's going to give you. For me, being an actuary is an opportunity to make a difference. And sometimes I don't even see the people that I'm making a difference in. I'm working in insurance, especially now during this COVID-19. A lot of families might lose their loved ones. We're able to help from an insurance perspective. I think that's where I feel like, yes, in becoming an actuary, I'm able to make a difference. Scenario analysis, there's an actuary on the governmental task to do this COVID-19. We're able to help in terms of from a national perspective. So the applications, once you become an actuary, are endless. I think what's important to remember is that your qualification is not a crutch. Once you have this qualification, you can do with it whatever you want. And I think in an article for SA Actuary, they asked me to say, what do I want my career to do for me in the next coming years? And I said, you know what, I spent so much time trying to qualify without really understanding what that qualification is going to do for me personally. So I think when I'm looking at my career, now that I'm qualified, I'm thinking, where does my career need to be to assist me in terms of some of my personal goals? So it's the same thing for you. What will qualifying do for you in terms of fulfilling your personal goals? Because at the end of the day, being an actuary is the profession you have chosen. You're still an individual on your own right. And you need this qualification, this qualification to empower you to be able to do that. So be very clear that your journey towards becoming an actuary is very aligned to your passion as an individual. And I think the opportunity in actuarial science is so great that whether you're in banking, there's so many things you can do. There's an actuary in construction. I mean, in the past, who would have thought that an actuary would work in a construction company? We can do all of those things. I think the serial qualification has opened a lot of doors for actuaries. So I think in terms of the scope of opportunity, once you have that, it gives you such a lot of things. And it just, in fact, the respect that you normally get from people. You get a lot of respect for good reasons, because they value you as an individual, that you're willing to put in the work, where a lot of people might have decided not to really get it. So there's also a lot of people that have done really well post getting the qualification at university and branched up to other fields, and they've done really well there. So again, I come back to the point that why do you want to be an actuary? If you can, whatever your reasons are, if being an actuary is not going to give you that, then you might find that it's not worth it for you. But there's a lot of people in first year, second year who dropped out and did other things, and they're very successful in their own rights. So I think this qualification, you must really make it personal for you, for it to work for you. I would not advise people to write exams while at varsity, because I think the number of the exemptions that you have at university are sufficient that you don't need to start writing exams. You're just giving yourself unnecessary stress. So when you're at university, focus on being at university. I think when you're living life, it's quite important that you live in the moment. Post-university, you'll never get an opportunity to go back and relive your university life. So it's quite important that you make the best of that situation. Your first few years of working, you're also not going to have a lot of responsibility. So you might have some time to socialize a little bit, not to say you must overdo it. Your exams are quite important. But it's quite important that whatever stage you are in your life, you take full advantage of that. You're not going to be young forever. You're not going to be allowed to do some of the things you're doing now forever. So focus on being a student, enjoy being a student, make sure you get all your exemptions if you can, and let that be your focus. So I think when you're in third year, start job hunting and focus on that and passing your exams. If you have got your degree and now you're just looking to find a job, if you can afford to write those exams and get exemptions, it will help you in terms of even the job, getting a job, because the more exemptions you have, the better position you are in. So if you can do it, I know people who took a break from job hunting, from working, just to try and qualify. It worked for some, it didn't work for others. So you really need to listen to your inner voice in terms of what works and doesn't work for you. So which actuarial subjects do you think is easy to get exemptions for? So I think what people need to understand is that your strengths are not going to be the same as the next person's strength. So for example, business accounting has been said to be one of the easy exemptions to get. It was very, very difficult for me. So I think play to your strengths. If you think you're not going to get a particular exemption, maybe try and just pass that exam and then focus on the exam that you can get an exemption on. However, I would caution you against doing that as well, unless you really, really are confident in that you can really pass, because you also don't want to neglect a subject and risk failing. So I think you must try and get every exemption that's available, because it will take you the average, I think, qualifying time post-university is 10 years. Now that's a long time. If you can shorten that to 2 years because you get all your exemption, that's a win. Your more practical exams, I think, are a lot easier to get, but that is dependent on the fact that you understand the concepts. So your practice questions, because you can practice a lot, you'll then be better prepared to do your exams. So I think your CTs generally are a lot easier than your STs because there's a lot of reading, and the way you were taught to study in high school will help you with your CTs. But once you get to your CTs, you might have to change your exam technique. So again, get as many exemptions as possible. So the next question is, you kept writing after your varsity. Thing is, once you get a job and the money is satisfactory, there's really nothing, since most actuaries are so with that, again, why are you trying to qualify as an actuary? If it's just about the money, the more so normally how it works is that most companies, every exam you pass is an increase on your salary. So it's very unlikely that you will not have the motivation to pass an exam if money is your objective, because the more exemptions you have, the higher your salary. And in fact, when you're changing jobs, people who are qualified actuaries find it a lot easier to get jobs than those that are not qualified. The ones that are not qualified that have really done well have really stood out in terms of shining, either it be personality or whatever the case might be. You must find a way to stand out outside of exams. And even after you're qualified, the fact that you're a qualified actuary in a sea of qualified actuary, you become it becomes again like you're starting from scratch. So personality, work ethic, all those things are going to help. But again, decide why you want to be an actuary. It's for money. If it's just for money, you can do a lot of easier things for the money. You don't need to be an actuary for money. But if it's broader than just the money, then qualify. It's worth it, and it's something you started. So there's also what you call a utility. There's a satisfaction out of saying I started this journey and I completed it. I must say, when I got the news that I passed my last exam, I remember I was sitting at Nando's, and people say you always remember where you were and what you were doing when you got the news that you passed your last exam. I was sitting at Nando's waiting for my cousin. When they said to me I passed, first of all, I didn't believe it. I had to check. Then I thought, okay, they made a mistake. Maybe I didn't actually pass. And maybe they're going to come back and say to me, no, you need to rewrite this thing. So I checked and checked again, and I qualified. I promise you I couldn't eat. I was so relieved. I can't even say I was happy. Like I was ecstatically happy. I think being happy came later. And then I just felt so exhausted because it's something I'd been working towards for such a long time. When those nerves had settled in, I was like, sure, memory, Zimba, well done. Well done, you did it. And that type of self, well done, nobody can give it to you until you have actually gone through the journey and qualified. So I'm just going to move a little bit faster because I don't want to neglect answering questions. So studying during lockdown, if you have access to internet, as you all who have logged in have, use YouTube to get to those concepts that you are struggling with. You have your notes already. Pre-read ahead. I know it's very difficult, especially when your exam is very far. I struggled with that. Even post-university, I struggled with keeping a consistent mindset in terms of studying. But the people that managed that, I'm not sure if you've heard, when I was at varsity, there were always stories of how Rantimo Tapo was the smartest and what. With the smartest came, he worked hard. There were stories of how they used to study in winter with their feet in coat buckets to stay awake as they studied. So I think that differentiates people. There's no substitute for hard work. So if you can put in the hard work now, and I know that not every environment is conducive to studying, you'll fare far much better once universities reopen, because you would have understood certain concepts. If there were concepts you're struggling with in the past, use YouTube to Google and see all these things that you were struggling with and really cement that knowledge. So when you go back to university, you are really putting yourself ahead. Because I think what's going to happen now when schools open is that they're going to pack a program that was supposed to be over a certain period in a very short time. The people that are going to thrive are those people that preempted that and are already now studying, not those people who wait until they go to university before they start doing the work, because there's going to be a lot of pressure on you guys once this lockdown is finished. So study online, read your books, read your notes, the things you're struggling with, do that. If you can do past papers, do past papers under exam conditions, mark them yourself. Yeah, have study groups. I think it's also a lot easier when you're studying in a group, but also make sure that you're actually doing study and it's a productive study session. The advantage of being in a group is that you also hold each other to account. So if, for example, you've said that you're going to study a particular chapter, it's very embarrassing. I don't know what your group of friends is like. The groups of friendships are like that you didn't do it and everybody else do it. So it will put pressure on you to also study if you're doing it with other people. So I did, my first ST was in life. I then decided to do my fellowship in life because I thought it would be easy since I've just done the life ST. I'm not sure if it made it easier. I think I failed fellowship the most. I think I only passed fellowship on my third attempt. So I think, again, think about what you want this actuarial science thing to give you. And when you choose your STs, choose them aligned to ultimately what you want to do. I think what I did that I wish I hadn't done when I was trying to qualify is that I didn't think past qualifying. I think mostly because I never thought I would actually eventually qualify. So the goal was just to, if we can just qualify, that was enough for me. But once you qualify, and I saw it in my last 2 exams, that I then became scared of qualifying. I know it seems counterintuitive, but I became scared of qualifying, because then the goal that you've been working on for so long is done. Then what? What do you do? So when you're doing your CTs, you have leverage to sort of, your CTs will give you a base to say, what do I enjoy the most? Once your CTs are over, when you're doing your CA1, it will also help you to decide what you mostly enjoy. Once that's done, you then need to think about what you want to specialize in. When you have decided what you want to specialize in, it will help you in terms of deciding which ST to do. I think the corporate world will receive you in the way you present yourself. So short-term insurance, I think there's now a big affinity towards doing that. There's requirement for skills there. So there's a lot of people trying to get into short-term insurance, because there seems to be more opportunities than, for example, your traditional actuarial field. But I want to caution you to say that the qualification is an enabler. It's not a crutch. So this thing teaches you how to think, how to problem solve. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. There's a lot of people who are, and I think it reminds me of a poem, that the road less traveled. Just because some other people have not been successful in a particular area does not mean you are not going to be successful in that area. So try and first decide what you're passionate about, and sort of guide your career towards that, then trying to determine what corporates want and give them that. Because once you are in the corporate life, at some point the money is no longer, it stops being about the money. You get to a point where you're just so unhappy. And there's a lot of people that have said they're very unhappy in their jobs, and you guys can relate, I think, with your parents, your aunts, your uncles, that people are unhappy with their jobs. That part of that unhappiness is because you yourself did not decide what you were passionate about and go for that. Just because you're becoming an actuary, you're going to be an actuary, does not mean you can align that with whatever you're passionate about. So start with what you enjoy and build a career around that. It will make corporate life a lot easier. So there is actually a lot of actuaries working in banks. I think one of the people who helped us organize this session, Gerald, he's working in banking, and he did actuarial science. So there's a lot of actuaries working in banking, working with derivatives, and there's also a banking fellowship. And South Africa is the first to introduce that banking fellowship. So there's a lot banking. There's a lot of space for actuaries there. So I made the decision not to go to honors. I think just because I reached a point where I really emotionally couldn't do it. But if you can do it and you do qualify for it, I would say do it, because it helps you even in terms of qualifying, because you can get exemptions there in honors as a full-time student as opposed to working and studying at the same time. So if you can do honors and you qualify to do honors and you can afford to do honors, do it, because a lot of people then want to do their MBA and then you have to do a postgraduate diploma. So if you have your honors, it really helps. And if you decide to do masters, then you can then do masters. So my first job was in insurance. In the company that I worked for, I was working in life insurance. I grew to love it. I think I was at the time desperate, but now I really enjoy working in insurance. So that's why I thought I want to specialize in insurance. And so that's how I chose. I decided based on what I was passionate about. But I think whatever you specialize in, it doesn't mean you can't do other things. So once you become a qualified actuary, there's what they call practicing certificates. And there's people with more than one practicing certificate. So your fellowship is your specialization. After that, you can continue specializing in other fields. So how did I deal with setbacks of failing an exam? I think, of course, the first thing that happened is I cried a lot. And then once the crying stopped, I think I And I must say, I wasn't very good at it because I was very hard on myself. And I assume a lot of you also are. I think I got to a point where I accepted that failing is a part of life and it's an opportunity to learn something. I think the subjects that I did fail, when I repeated that subject, there are things I picked up that I didn't know, that I did a lot better on. So in terms of your knowledge and understanding, when you fail a subject, it forces you to really look into it. I think what failure also taught me is to be able to open and communicate with people. Because when you fail something and you reach out to somebody and say, this is how I'm feeling, and they also say, oh, maybe I went through the same thing at some stage, it helps you understand that failure is a part of life. So if you're facing failure for the first time at university, it's something that's a part of life. And the sooner you learn to deal with it, the better. Failing, you can only say you've truly failed if you didn't pick yourself up and try again. So in your actuarial exams, you have many opportunities that you're going to fail an exam that does not make you a failure at all. You repeat that and you pass it. I think some of the most successful people in the world failed. If you look at your Bill Gates and all these billionaires, a lot of them failed, but it didn't dictate how successful they'll become. So I think that's very important to remember. Do you think that doing honors in something else other than actuarial science will help in terms of qualifying and working as an actuary? I think because you are at a stage where you're trying to qualify, I would advise you to do your honors in actuarial science simply because it's going to help you get more exemptions. If you're not yet sure that you want to do actuarial science, then I might suggest there that you maybe consider doing honors in something else, and then you can decide after that to say, do you want to continue with actuarial science or not? There are countries where people don't even have an undergraduate in actuarial science, and they only start writing board exams post-university. So if you think about it from that perspective, not having done an honors in actuarial science is not going to stop you from being an actuary. What it might do is that it might delay how long it takes you. It might delay your qualification, and you might take longer than is necessary for you to qualify. How do you apply your board exams? What are the timeframes for applying? So if you're already registered, we write board exams twice a year, in April and in September. The Actuarial Society of South Africa and the Institute and Faculty in the UK, for those people registered with that institution, send out emails to say, this is, you can register for these exams, the sessions are open, and then you just register. So the first thing is that you first of all need to join the Actuarial Society of South Africa. I would advise you to especially join the Actuarial Society of South Africa, because once you finish your CTs, you'll then be learning legislation applicable to the country. So just in terms of, if you want to know more about South Africa and you don't have an intention of working overseas, and even if you do have an intention of working overseas, you'll really specialize within the South African context, so it will help you. And South African actuaries are really, I think they're looked upon to be a little bit extra, I think. So I've heard, don't quote me on that. So just getting your qualification through ASA might help you later on. So there's two ways you can register. First of all, when you apply to become a member of the Actuarial Society of South Africa, and I think that goes with everything else, is that you need somebody to be your referral, to say, we think this person is able to become an actuary. So admit them, let them become a member of the Actuarial Society of South Africa. So that's your first step. You join the profession, and then there you'll start getting communications that will help you in terms of when to apply, what to apply for, and the costing behind that. Vacation work in June is difficult. At this point, we're just trying to see what happens. We are trying to find out ways, the same way we found remote ways of doing these mentorship sessions. And I think there's 10 more minutes so that the recording isn't too long. We're going to find a way to try and see if people can work remotely. However, that might not be possible just because of the fact that companies are really tightening their belts. They're trying to support the people that are employed already as far as possible, because this COVID-19 is going to really impact a lot of people financially. So there might not be that opportunity, but we'll certainly, as a SAWA, try our best to make sure those opportunities are still there. If it's during the lockdown, the likelihood is even less. But there we're also trying to see if we can find solutions around that, just to expose students to the work environment. Please, can I just ask that person to just mute? Thank you. Are the things you deal with at work the same as what you do in class? So what I found is that your university career, depending on what field you go into, you might not do all the things that you studied in university. However, for the exams, to pass the exams and qualify, you're definitely going to use that. What being in work does for you is that it gives you practical experience to some of the topics that you did at university. So if, for example, you're working for an insurance company and you're going to do your board exam, your STs in insurance, for example, that would definitely make it easier for you to pass that exam. But I just want to also remind you guys that just because you're not using something now does not mean you will never use it. There'll come a point in your career where you actually have to go back to basics and calculate those QXs for those in third year in your work life that you won't do early on in your career, but you do later on. So really your foundation is quite important, that you remember all those things, and you might not use them immediately you start working, but at some point you definitely will make use of them. So what are the other rewards of being a qualified actuary other than the good salary? Again, for me, I think the salary is not that important for me. I think I've realized that in life, your passion is very, very important. I think being an actuary has allowed me to be able to, I love empowering people. I think being able to do this is a product of my having qualified. I don't know if I was in first year, if you guys would be listening to me, but qualifying as an actuary has helped me pursue my passion. I love traveling. It has allowed me to do that. I like contributing to community issues. I think being a SAWA president means that I get invited to contribute to things of national importance. I speak sometimes at government gatherings. I had the opportunity to meet Patrice Motsepe and Precious Motsepe. Those are opportunities I wouldn't have had if I had not been an actuary or been in the profession. Of course, there were other professionals that were also invited, but that's what being an actuary has, and being in the actuarial profession has given me. I think what's important to remember here is that everybody who's studying actuarial science is studying just like you. For you to be able to differentiate yourself, even amongst qualified actuaries, there's some actuaries that are known more than others. The reason for that is that they are differentiated themselves, and in most cases, they have done so by following their passions. So it's quite important that you align your career with your passion and make sure that the two leverage off of each other. I think what has helped me stay motivated is really that at times when I'm struggling with work, SAWA is going really great. I'm feeling like I'm making an impact there. When things are frustrating in my SAWA life, the work life is motivating. So that gives you that nice balance. And of course, when I bring in my social life, I also have that. I think the opportunity to engage with a lot of people has also been really, really great. I think this is going to be the last question. It's been an hour and a half. What exactly do you as a life actuary do? So if I give an example of today, I was looking at a model, automating a model with a consultant. They're helping us build a model to make it easier to do certain calculations better. I've been doing regulatory returns because the Prudential Authority wants to make sure that insurance companies are well capitalized. The financial, the FSCA is making sure that from a conduct perspective, we are treating our policyholders well. So they have a role to play as well in terms of when we're doing our pricing, making sure that the policyholders are also taken care of, that we're not unfair to policyholders. I build models sometimes. At this point, I'm doing a lot of supervising because I'm an actuarial manager. So a lot of my job is supporting the actuarial analysts with some technical expertise, advice in terms of qualifying. So I must say, at the moment, I'm really living my best life because I'm doing the things that I'm passionate about. When I feel like building a model, I can do that. In terms of being able to help, in terms of where the business is going, I have an input there as well. So my role as a life actuary is very exciting, and I'm excited because I don't do any one thing. I get to work on a lot of things at the same time. So that's really nice. And I get to motivate young people like yourselves throughout their qualifying journey so that they can also qualify. So I'm really enjoying what I'm doing at the moment. Have I looked into working in another country? I think I like holidaying in other countries. I'm so passionate about being in Africa and staying in Africa that I've worked in Dubai. I've seen what it's like. I think there's definitely merit in terms of your international knowledge and working overseas. For me personally, I'm just so excited about South Africa and all the different possibilities that are in Africa that working overseas has not really been a priority for me. I'm excited at the opportunities within South Africa and the fact that we can build better tomorrow for the people in South Africa. That's my passion. So that's why I haven't really thought about working elsewhere. You didn't mention how many years it took you to become a qualified. I think it was over 10 years. I think it really was over 10 years. So that's why I couldn't, when you were asking, I was trying to do the maths between 2004 and 2019. That's how many years. That's a lot of years. So yeah, that's what. So I think now we'll end the Zoom session. What I can say to the rest of you that are still online, we have lost a few people because we have taken so long, is do watch the Insurance Apprentice. I think you're seeing me now when I'm smiling and I'm at my best. There you will see me crumble, and you will really truly see when I say I've gone through struggles and it's possible to work through those struggles. You will really see me struggling and crying and facing these challenges and actually getting through them. And after this session, if once you guys have watched the Insurance Apprentice and just have questions, I'll be very happy to organize another mentorship session just to go through some of the questions you might come up with after watching me at my best and at my worst. So thank you so much to everybody who made time to do this. And I'm looking forward to the university chapters, the various university chapters, inviting more people to come and speak to you guys during this lockdown. So well done to all the university teams who made this possible and advertise. It's been fun for me, as much as I hope you have enjoyed it. And this really is my passion. So whether it's on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, I put a disclaimer that on Instagram, Facebook, I'm not really good at that. And today I actually figured out after many years what my Twitter password is. So I'm not great with social media, but I'm generally good with LinkedIn. So thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to your questions post this session. So the YouTube channel, we are still looking into that, but we will save this recording and put it on YouTube. So for the people who weren't able to access this due to connectivity issues, that they'll be able to access it. I'll share the link to the Insurance Apprentice on my LinkedIn page as well.
Yes, Memory, definitely.
You,
we'll share the entire session after the show.
Okay, great, fabulous. So thank you so much. And if you have requests of university people, of the people you want to be on this mentorship session, do let us know, do let them know, and we'll see as far as possible from an ASAWA perspective on how to make it happen. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to interacting with you outside the session. Have a good evening.
Cheers, goodbye.
Cheers, bye.
Thank you, goodbye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you for attending.
Thank you. Bye.
We hope it was valuable for you.
Thank you, Kara.
Thank you very much. It was a very informative session.
Thanks,
I'm very
Didi.
glad, thank you.
You should do it more often, please, if you don't mind.
Thank you,
I think
Memory.
before everybody goes, I just want to thank Gerald for making this session possible for us. So thank you so much, Gerald. And I hope we can do a mentorship session with you as well, although you're not an actuary, but I think the students can learn a lot from you as well. So thank you, Gerald, so very much for making this possible for us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Atlanta. Soshin, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
Wait.
everyone. Have a good